For some analysis, I'm joined in the studio now by two guests. I've got DW Middle East analyst Shani Roxanes here, and also Hans-Jakob Schindler, who is a senior director of the Counter-Extremism Project and also an expert on international security and diplomacy. It's great to have you both with us. Hans-Jakob, I'd like to start with you. We just heard at the end of that report that Iran's top diplomat saying today that Iran might be willing to stop its missile attacks on Israel if Israel halted its military campaign. What do you make of that?
Look, I mean, the regime is in a very difficult situation here. There is an ending number of ballistic missiles that they have. The estimate is a couple of thousand. They're using up a few more than 100 a day. So this is a very ending proposition of their ability to respond in a manner that doesn't involve the United States, i.e. shooting at Israel. In addition, of course, it's good diplomatic posturing, saying, you know, we are the ones that got attacked, but we are willing to stop if you're going to stop. I cannot see any logic that would lead to a cessation of the strikes from the Israeli side if the declared aims, destruction of Iran's missile capabilities and a significant setback of its nuclear dossier is supposed to be achieved at this point. If they would stop now, it's a couple of months and Iran is back where it was.
Well, indeed, we're not hearing any kind of signals from Israeli officials about diplomacy. Shani, could Israel be open to any form of negotiation at this stage, or they just simply do not want to de-escalate?
Well, I think there's a big difference between what's happening in the back channels and what we're seeing. I mean, you look at the rhetoric, you see it. Israel, Netanyahu today extended the special emergency situation in Israel until the end of June. You hear military chiefs talking about we need to preparing Israeli citizens for a long stretch of at least a few more weeks. These are the numbers they're using. But then at the same time, we see President Trump saying he's working and he's hoping to find some solution. We know there are also other back channels that some Israeli sources are saying are happening. I think, as was mentioned here, we need to understand that this turning into a war of attrition is something that is not really beneficial for either sides. I mean, Israelis, after 20 months of war in Gaza, are exhausted. The military is very much, depletable. We need to also understand Israel tries to maintain itself as a modern economy. This is, seeing missiles falling. There's no real life. There's no actual normalcy in Israel anywhere. It's such a country, it's such a small country. So Israel would not be able to sustain it for too long, despite the fact it's not trying to, it's not admitting that. And the same goes for Iran. I think the hope for Israel is that the longer this goes, the more fragile the regime will get. And then the bigger goal, an unofficial goal that Netanyahu is striving for, which would be toppling the Iranian regime, will be achieved.
I am actually curious about public opinion in both countries. In Iran, we're hearing lots of very angry statements, young people who are determined to stand up to what they see as the aggressor, Israel, and also the United States in many ways. How much support is there in Iran for continuing this standoff with Israel?
I mean, there are a couple of points to consider here. Number one, the regime and the founders of the regime toppled another regime, so they learned from the experience on how they toppled the Shah that you can never have too small of a social basis. In the end, it was the famous 1,000 families in Iran that supported the Shah, and it was a very narrow social basis, easy to topple. So they made sure through various means of social shares in government companies, through privatization, the Basij, and many state organizations, to get at least about 15 to 20% of the population financially dependent on the existence of this regime and no other regime. So that's the first point. The second point is, of course, there is opposition in Iran, very clearly expressed since really 2009, first with the Green Movement, then the workers' protests in 2019, the Women Life Freedom protests in 2022. But there is not an organized opposition since 2010. The opposition is split, it lacks vision, it lacks a strategy, and it lacks a leadership. And hence the regime is at the same time very fragile, economically, politically, militarily, but very capable of still maintaining that minimum social basis and be very effective on oppressing his own population.
Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has alluded to regime change. He even spoke directly to the people of Iran, urging them to stand up and perhaps topple the regime. Shani, is this Israel's ultimate goal, regime change in Iran?
Well, I think so. I mean, although not officially. And I'm not sure how close we are to that, in a sense that we've seen it also in Russia. We've seen it in many places. Even when you have a very controversial leader or a very controversial regime, once there is an attack, people come together. They don't need to be big fans of Israel or necessarily of the regime necessarily in order to feel like this is a time to unite. And if Israel, Israel says very clearly it is limited in its military ability to reach all its goals, which is eliminating the Iranian nuclear plan. Without American support, there's just so far Israel can get. But the idea of this war of attrition or sort of like ongoing grinding of Iran is to maybe bring more resentment, bring more, instability that will eventually lead to the falling of the Ayatollah regime.
There, of course, has been lots of attention on the timing of Israel's attack on Iran. They were supposed to have talks today, in fact, Iran and the United States, these nuclear talks, which, of course, are not taking place. Is there any chance that diplomacy could be revived at this point?
Look, I mean, the end product of this is going to be some kind of an agreement. There is no military solution to this particular conundrum. You can set back the nuclear dossier, but as George W. Bush famously said in the past, you can't bomb knowledge. Now, this is 30 years of a nuclear program. Yes, they have been really going after key scientists as well to make sure that at least those who were directly involved in the weapons aspects of this nuclear program and the research of it are gone, but there are thousands of engineers who know how to do enrichment, who know how to do conversion. So there has to be some kind of a negotiation at the end. For the regime, really, there will be a point where it is about survival. They can withstand Israeli attacks for quite a while. They can control their population, but should the United States get involved militarily, we are not talking about a couple of attacks a day. We are talking about hundreds of attacks a day. The capability to attack all of the targets simultaneously will be there from the get-go. That is why the Iranians are so careful. Yes, there are threats against attacking nuclear US installations. There is no attack whatsoever. When Soleimani was killed, they attacked nuclear bases in Iraq. In between, the Iraqi militias attacked US bases in Iraq. Now, when it would be really needed to put pressure, they do not. So there is a clear attempt from the Iranian side not to get the US involved.
Yeah, this is a quite big success also for Trump in a way. He manages to, because this all started when we were seeing the Americans clearing their staff from American embassies in the region because they were afraid of the Iranian retaliation on their locations and targets. So Trump managed in a way, because you're talking negotiations would have been between Iran and the US. Technically, Israel is not even a side to that. At the same time, Trump manages to keep the door open for talks while still backing Israel and creating this separation between what Israel does and what Trump does, although it's very clear Israel would have not gone on this operation, on this war, would not have started it without knowing it had at least American support. If Trump would have vetoed that, they would have not gone ahead and done that.
Well, absolutely. We heard also from Israel that they not only informed the United States ahead of time of their strikes on Iran, they also are still receiving some kind of support from the United States. But how much support can Israel really count on from the U.S. to continue this operation?
I think that's the key question, and that will definitely determine where this goes in the next days. We see that within the Republican base, there's the classic old-style Republicans that are very much supportive of Israel attacking Iran and America interventionist attitude. And on the other hand, we have the MAGA crowd who are not very much big fans of that. And Trump is a bit torn between them. You can see even just from today the things he was saying on the one hand, tweeting that this can be, there can be peace. And he's hoping for that. On the other hand, saying we might be also coming in more actively, leaning into this. So I think he's trying to keep all balls in the air. And I think it's very clear he doesn't have a very clear plan or an end game or a way out.
But there's sometimes words really do matter. If you read through the statement of the Secretary of State, Rubio, and the speech of the UN Permanent Representative in the United Nations Security Council session last night, both times they say, to Iran, do not attack US interests, US personnel, or US installations. They don't say stop attacking Israel. They don't mention Israel in one word in that statement. So there's a clear part of the administration saying, not our fight, right? Come to us when you're ready.
Words matter indeed. That was Hans-Jakob Schindler, Senior Director of the Counter-Extremism Project, and also DW's Middle East analyst, Shani Roxanes. Thank you very much to both of you for all of your insights. Really great stuff.
Holly Dagres is a senior fellow at the Washington Institute think tank, which focuses on Iran. She joins me now for more analysis. Holly, Iran's top diplomat signaled today that Iran might be willing to stop firing missiles at Israel if Israel halts its military campaign. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I think that we have to realize that this operation Rising Sun has now led to a war, and the Israelis haven't, at least according to some of their commentary in the media, are still in the process of their operation in Iran. And it seems that as long as it continues, which they've said up to 2 weeks, that we will be seeing that the Israelis will be continuing this onslaught. And as long as this continues, the Iranians are going to keep retaliating. And so this is what war looks like and what we're seeing right now.
So why the statement at this particular time?
Well, I think that they do want to de-escalate because they're getting heavily pummeled. Their military infrastructure is being hit. Their energy facilities are being hit. Their nuclear program is being hit. Their top military brass is being assassinated. So, and it's not just Iranian officials that are getting hurt in this. The powerless ordinary Iranians that don't have air raid sirens to warn them. They don't have shelters. They're being caught in the middle of this war, and it's really impacting their day-to-day lives right now. So for a regime that is unpopular with its people, it's a matter of survival at this point.
Let's unpack and put into perspective some of what you just said, which was a lot, actually. Iran's Revolutionary Guards have reported 6, I should say, more generals killed today. That's 14 deaths in total among the military leadership, not to mention the scientists. We all have a limited vantage point, of course, but what does your expertise tell you? How big a blow is all this to the regime?
This is a very big blow because of these characters that have been assassinated had key roles. So they knew their files and subjects very well, and replacing them, they're definitely, to number twos, number threes, it's very easy to replace these people, but it's that in-depth knowledge and the years they've experienced that's irreplaceable. And so while this may seem like a big win for Israel, this is essentially another form of what they call mowing the lawn, because you're not taking out the regime's thinking. It still exists because there's other people to replace them. So this is just bringing more of a fight from the Iranians, who will push back because they are a revolutionary state, the Islamic Republic, that is.
We've seen a lot of angry, very resolved rhetoric coming from Iranians on television and also on social media. What's your take on the current mood among Iranians?
Well, Iranians are very shaken and scared right now. They're angry as well because they're caught in the middle of this. They have lived under an Islamic Republic that's been in war with them for 46 years. And being in this situation is because of the decisions of the regime that they no longer want. But as this continues, as more civilian casualties happen, Iranians who don't want this regime don't want it to be at the cost of bloodshed and war. And they are powerless in this situation. As I noted earlier, they don't have air raid sirens. They don't have shelters. And so when these events are happening day in and day out, this war, they're risking their lives right now on the ground, being caught in the middle of this. And I think it's noteworthy to note a comment that was made by not just one, but several Iranians. They have all these resources to repress their people, but they can't even protect them. And so when we're seeing what's happening, I think it's noteworthy that there are also people that are caught in the middle of this war, and that we need to highlight that more.
Interesting. We should mention that Iran has effectively walked away from nuclear talks with the U.S., which were planned for today. Does that say anything at all about their appetite for a diplomatic solution to this conflict? What's the calculus here?
Well, respectfully, the US and Iran were supposed to sit at a negotiating table, as you noted today, but that didn't happen because they never got to that point because a war started. So I don't know anyone that decides to sit after something like that happens, at least for the time being. And I think for the Islamic Republic, they are not going to bow down to that sort of pressure just yet. They are open to diplomacy because they need to survive. But if this continues, which it presumably will, they're going to not sit down to talk unless there's a de-escalation on the Israeli side. And the Israelis have thus far been continuing this operation, and it seems like at what cost and how long, it's unclear. But it doesn't seem like they have an end game right now because they seem to be hitting all these different parts of the country. Analysts like myself always thought when they were going to do a strike on Iran, it was going to be purely focused on the country's nuclear program. But you're seeing that they've been hitting different parts, and it's clear that this is becoming clear that this is a goal of regime collapse and making sure that the Islamic Republic can't get back up and try to attack Israel in the future. So that's going to be very costly, given that these areas that some of the military infrastructure occupy are in highly or densely populated areas.
Understood. Iran expert Holly Dagres, we appreciate your insights. Thank you.